Greetings and durud. Welcome to this latest edition of Farhang Foundation's Connect Live virtual talk series. I am Ali Reza Ardakani, Executive Director of Farhang Foundation. We are a non-political, non-religious, not-for-profit organization that thrives with the support of our members. Our sole mission is to celebrate and promote Iranian art and culture, enriching the global community. Today, we present this episode in collaboration with San Francisco's renowned Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, home of our current exhibition, Nicky Nodjoumi, The Personal is Political, and AKArt, Etched in Time. Two groundbreaking solo exhibitions currently on display through March 23rd, 2025, curated by Amy Kisch. We're honored to welcome our esteemed guests today, the incomparable artist, Mr. Nicky Nodjoumi, who will be joined in conversation by legendary scholar and curator, Dr. Layla S. Diba. Brooklyn-based artist Nicky Nodjoumi was born in Kermanshah, Iran. He earned a bachelor's degree in art from the Tehran University of Fine Arts. Nodjoumi relocated to the United States in the late 1960s, where he received his master's degree in fine arts from the City College of New York in 1974. Returning to Tehran to join the faculty of his alma mater, Nodjoumi continued the journey of political engagement that has been foundational to his work across decades. He began designing political posters inspired by the revolutionary spirit, sweeping the country only to be exiled in the aftermath of the 1979 revolution. Nodjoumi's political engagement has continued to the present day. Mr. Nodjoumi's works are featured in prominent institutional collections worldwide, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the British Museum, the Guggenheim Museum in Abu Dhabi, the DePaul Art Museum of Chicago, and the National Museum of Cuba. Dr. Layla S. Diba is an independent art advisor, scholar, and curator specializing in the art of 19th and 20th century Iran. She has devoted her career to increasing understanding between Iranians and Americans through the arts. She held the post of the director and chief curator of the Negarestan Museum of 18th and 19th century Iranian art in Tehran from its inception in 1975 until 1978. Under her leadership, the holdings of the museum increased from a few hundred items to more than 3,000 artworks. After moving to the United States in 1979, she obtained her doctorate from the Institute of Fine Arts, NYU, and became the Brooklyn Museum of Art's curator of Islamic art from 1990 to 2000. Subsequently, she continued her advisory and scholarly activities with other major American institutions and foundations, including the Encyclopedica Iranica Foundation, the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi Museum, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. Dr. Diba currently sits on the board of the Soudavar Memorial Foundation and on the visiting committee of the Islamic Art Department of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Former board positions include the Encyclopedia Iranica Foundation and the National Museum of Asian Art, Charles Lang Freer and the Arthur M. Sackler Galleries, Washington, D.C. Current projects include the publications Inventing the Modern Iranian Landscape, Kamal Mulk, Paintings of Qajar Iran, and Art in Peril, the case of the Negarestan Museum and its collection of 18th and 19th century Iranian art. Farhang Foundation is also tremendously honored to have her serve on our advisory board. Please note that we will be holding a Q&A session at the end of today's conversation, moderated by none other than Amy Kisch, founder and CEO of AKArt Advisory and the incredible curator of the current Nicky Nodjoumi and AKArt exhibition at the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. Now, please join me as we welcome Dr. Layla Diba and Nicky Nodjoumi. Welcome.
Morning. Thank you, and good morning to you.
It's lovely to have you. Good afternoon, good morning, Nicky John.
Thank you, Ali Reza. Merci.
It's lovely to have you both here. I will step back now and let Layla John take over.
Thank you, Ali Reza. Thank you for your very gracious introduction and for inviting Nikki and I to have this opportunity to have a conversation about his practice, which, as we have noted, the personal is political and the political is personal. They are intertwined in his life and his art. And I would begin with a quote from the leading New York art critic, Colin Cotter, who in 2013, when Nicky was one of the artists shown in Iran Modern, said that his work was bruise dark, emergency art. The sound of alarms still surrounds it. And that is the most eloquent, I think, and perceptive assessment of Nicky's work at the height of his powers. The work is mysterious. It is a mystery at the heart and within a conundrum. So I would like to take the opportunity today to, with Nicky's help, to try and disentangle some of the meanings and to try and decode some of his mysterious languages for our audience. And one wonderful opportunity is that Nicky really believes in dialogue, and we've had a number of dialogues in over 20 years, which are always illuminating. And it is particularly important because his work is more about the message than it is about dialogue. So I would like to go back, Nicky John, and ask you about a little more. Ali Reza has introduced the highlights of your career, but I'd like to go back to your early years, your education in Iran and New York, and your political activities and your interactions with artists and intellectuals in both locations, if you would.
Thank you, Layla John. Thank you, Ali Reza and Farhang Foundation and Yerba Buena. My early education actually started from Kermanshah, Layla John. Kermanshah, I was interested in painting from childhood. And by probably 12, 13 years old, I started doing oil painting. And I had a teacher for 3 months that taught me how to paint oil painting. But by 17, 18 years old, I was able to copy the masterpieces of Russian 19th century realist painter like Repin, Ayvazovsky's, and all those people. But then it wasn't enough. I was trying to get more education in the field of the painting. So someone told me the best way is to go to Tehran and participate in the concours and go to Faculty of Fine Arts in Tehran, which I did. I think the first year I was able to be accepted to the Danishgah Tehran, University of Tehran. Then the next year I was able to pass it. My enthusiasm was enormous at that time because I was finally got to some place that I could learn, what I want. To make a short the 4 or 5 years I was in the Tehran University, the teaching wasn't that great. What I really learned, I learned through watching the other student, the older student. I could learn more from them rather than the teachers that we had. So past that time, when I came to United States, I wanted to tell you the truth. I wanted to study filmmaking, which I wasn't able to do it because of financial reason. So I went to City College for Master of Fine Arts. There I had a problem because most of the class were talking. There was not many, well, what do you say, classes of art, doing practical art.
It was more theory. It was more theory.
It wasn't really theory. It was more talking about the conceptualism or whatever was happening in that time. My interesting was at the end of this class, each classes, I would go to professor of the class. I would say, "What is the relationship between art and politics?" And they would just look at me strangely. It's like, what is going on? So that was my education in the United States too. But at the same time, I was going to the museum and I was able to realize that the abstract expressionism, what that means to be Jasper Johns, Rauschenberg, and a lot of other people. So I would go to the museum a lot and look at the artwork a lot.
So you were largely self-taught, or certainly your teachers didn't have that much influence, except your earliest teacher in Kermanshah, who introduced you to oil painting. But it does seem that you were, very interested in educating yourself. And being like a sponge, whether you were in Tehran or you were in New York. And I was thinking, is not unlike Kamal el-Mulk, who in his own time also didn't like authority very much. And he didn't like his teachers. And he said, I taught myself, which certainly seems to be true for both of you and both great artists. So similarities there. During this period, you began working with your colleagues in Tehran. You have gallery shows. You have interactions with the government, who, because of your political activities in New York, didn't allow you to teach, which is what you had studied for, but they did allow you to have shows in the galleries. And so there was an interaction, I think, between you and the intelligentsia, and one of that led to commissions and professionalizing yourself. One of these projects was initiated by a colleague called Firuz Shirvanlu, who was a former revolutionary recanted, who had worked in the Center for Intellectual Development and then in the Office of the Queen. And he had a very interesting project that he asked you to join him with. Would you talk about, please, your Arjang of Mani project?
Yes, I think it was about probably in 1974 or 75 when I went back to Iran, and after the situation that I had with Sawak, Mr. Shirwanlu, I used to work with him before I go to United States. So he knew me, and I did some work as a freelance for the Qanun. And Shiwanlu was the one who arranged it. So at the time, 75, when I went back to Iran, I think he had a project. He was the head of the Niavaran Farhang Foundation. And he had this project that gave 5 contemporary Iranian artists 5 religious book to these artists to illustrate according to what they like, not according to the text of the book. So we were free to do whatever we want to do with the book. And one of those prophets that I was assigned to do the work was Mani, mannequinism. So I started working on that project almost a year. I did about 280 works. I spent 8 months in Tehran and 4 months in New York working on the project. By the time I finished the work was in 1978. By the time Shirvanlu had picked up 80 of them for the book, and the book was supposed to be published in Germany, really kind of big book and very luxurious printing, it was a revolution. So it didn't get to the printing, it didn't get anywhere, and I didn't get paid for it. So he called me and said, come and pick up your work. And
Yes.
that's what I did.
Well, I think I'd like to talk about the aesthetic of the aesthetic aspects later, but I think also this episode is exemplary of what has happened in your life in terms of the loss of your artworks, your struggles to get them back. And in some cases, you were successful, in others, you were not. In the case of Mani Zhaozhang, we're very happy that at least a percentage of these are now in California and that they have been saved from destruction. But your struggles to try and get your artworks back or out, it's a lot about loss and the losses that artists in exile experience, and it's very, very moving. Another example of loss in your life was a few years later when you lent almost 300 artworks to the Tehran Museum of Contemporary Art for what was supposed to be a retrospective of your work. Tell us what happened then.
That's another story.
I know.
So I was in Iran during the revolution, and I participated in every demonstration, and I witnessed a lot of situation in there. At the same time, I took about a bunch of work with me to Tehran. I didn't expect revolution, remember that. But it was my time to go to Tehran. Every year I used to go to Tehran. After 1975, I had the permission to have a show. So I would take some work to Iran for the show. This time I took much more radical work that I was doing in New York because I thought the situation is open and we can show this work. And revolution happened. During the revolution, I also did a bunch of work by the name of large painting, by the name of Report on Revolution, number 1 to number 10. So after all this incident that happened, Tomoka, the Museum of Modern Art in Tehran, opened up after the revolution. And the second show, they asked me to have to have the show, a kind of retrospective work. I sent them like probably more than 100 works for the show. I didn't go for the opening. The next Thursday, whatever the time was, an article came out in the newspaper of the Islamic Republic, which the director of the chief editor of the museum newspaper was Hussein Musavi, which was later on become the prime minister. And I had some kind of relationship with him through the Qadri's gallery, because he was one of the member of the Qadri's gallery. And I, as a student, used to go to the Qadri's gallery, and we see him, he was one of them, and he had this I think he also translated one of the works of Kandinsky for the gallery. Anyway, a critic sent by him wrote an article that called me anti-revolution and treason to the revolution and all these things. And 2 days later, someone called me and said, get out of the country as fast as you can. So 10 days later, I was out. I left all the works in the museum, and still we have not been able to recover it.
Yes, I mean the later story of this is really remarkable, because you've told me that the museum finally, in the last few years, sent you some images of some of the works. And in your daughter's film about your family and your life, we actually see her going and visiting the museum and trying to negotiate to get the works back. And then, but it seems that's not the end of the story. As you told me, there's just been an exhibition on portraiture in Tomoka, which I'd heard about, which initially included some of these very works, but once the exhibition was open, the works mysteriously disappeared. So we're still hopeful. As we said, your story is a story of struggle and survival, and ultimately of hope that someday we will see those. But of course, we have so much more other work of yours. Thank goodness you're a very prolific artist, Nicky John. So in spite of the difficulties, you came back to New York, where your wife Nahid was living, and you have a family. And the next 20 years, you keep on working consistently, but very much privately. You have some shows. You participated in some group shows in Queens Biennial. You show at the Pierogi Gallery, which is back in the news these days as an important avant-garde space. And yet very few of these works have survived. Now, you told me recently that when you came back to New York, you began making monotypes. And these same monotypes are now being shown in a gallery in Korea. And they're actually large-scale collages of a number of different groupings of these monotypes. And I'd love you to tell us more about how you started in this new medium and what you were able to do with this medium that you didn't do with oil on canvas, for instance.
Well, during the 70s, when Nahid, my ex-wife, was a student at NYU and studied teaching, and there was a workshop that I used to go to, and sometimes do something with the process. But I didn't like the process of etching or lithograph. So one time I was tempted to do the oil painting straight on the plate. that we use it as an etching, and put that plate underneath of the press machine. And whatever I get, we get one print. There is no second print of it.
Right.
But so that process was really interested me. And I probably 1976, 77, when I was working with Nahid on the workshop, I started doing that. In 1981, I did a lot of that more because I got a small press machine, 17 by 14 at home. So I had just small pieces of paper so I can make one. But I was ambitious. I wanted to do the larger piece. So I added all this one piece, 14 by 17, to like at the end is like 36 of them to become one work, which was really interesting. And each one of them, by the time I was doing it, would be a little bit different from the other one. So when they put them together, totally becomes something totally different from oil painting. So it was amazing texture, beautiful color, everything. So I continued probably until late 80s, but then I stopped.
Yeah. Well, it's very interesting how this process produced, a whole group of important works, and the aesthetics, and how it was very rewarding for you as an artist to discover a new medium and to be able to create large scale works from small scale, in a sense, like the small scale watercolors you did for the Arjang of Mani, and being able to enlarge those to your scale of your ambition. So it's hearing about the practice is very enlightening. And this is a period as in which you also form. You make your own little Iran in a way by forming friendships, lifelong friendships with Ardeshir Mohasses and Shirin Neshat, and a whole family of artists and creative people who supported each other and embarked on projects together. And so that in spite of it being a period of great struggle, financial struggle, moral, emotional struggle, was also a rewarding time that eventually led to your co-curating an extremely important retrospective of Ardeshir Mohasses's work at Asia Society that you and Shireen co-curated together, and that he was able to see before he died. And I think that was, a major achievement, your own coming of age, if you like, as a curator, as well as an artist, as a mentor, as a leader of the community. And eventually, when we did Iran Modern a few years later, we were very honored to have your work be part of it. And that work was what we began our discussion with, was Holland Cotter's Review. So I'd just like to go back a few moments and talk about how the Arjang of Mani and the few paintings we have from the 76, 77 period, how they presaged the later mature work. These early works, especially the Arjang, are kind of hybrid artworks between Eastern and Western traditions. And of course, the oil paintings are figural. You chose to work in a figural style when many, many artists were working in abstraction. And so I'd like you to perhaps highlight for our audience, what are some of the details or iconographic elements that are found in these early works that prefigure what we know from the later works?
Arjang Nome was a project that, as you mentioned, started probably 1976. And Mr. Shirwandu gave me assignment to do it. I didn't have much sources to go after. So there was a small book in English that he gave me. There was some black and white images, not really complete. So I had little to do with. At the beginning, I started literally following the text of the book of Money. That means the story of it, which was the struggle between light and dark. And that was the focus of the whole project. But during the year that I spent working on it, I probably went through the first style, which was based on the book, through another four other kind of style, which was the last one. Through this style, I look a lot at the Iranian miniature, at the 19th century lithograph illustration of Iran. And based on some of them, especially on the miniature, I did the work. And the work was not really miniaturistic like. I took some of the structures of the miniature. Those especially those places that the writing is happening.
Right.
And that's one thing. The other thing was so many layers of storytelling that in one image is happening. So I would take based on that two elements of the miniature. And that's what happened at the end of the Arjangname. What I did at the end, which was basically my own work, was I combined the incident that happening in our life now. That means contemporary life in the structure of the painting. So
I think we see the word cry for freedom, and
yes.
other signs that reflect the political situation at that time, or reflect censorship or artistic freedom. So even though I would say it's more subversive than very obvious, the political content is there. And in terms of your artistic process, it is fascinating to see you work within these 4 or 5 different modes and experimenting and taking from picking something from manuscript illustration or from pop artists and blending these into a really successful, it's hybrid, but I thought it was already really successful experiment in blending these different traditions to come up with a Iranian modernism, which was your goal, your primary goal as an artist. I also thought perhaps that being that Mani was an artist and a martyr, and in his own way a revolutionary, that you identified with him a little bit. Is that true?
I really didn't go that direction. I was based my concept between dark and the light.
Yes.
The struggle between light and dark, which is interesting at that moment, at that time. This is a 3 BC, 3C, whatever, 3rd century.
3rd century, yeah.
3rd century, that he was working for the freedom of the light.
Yes.
That freedom was the
you identified with. You did identify with. Yes. Well, when you reemerged in so-called reemerged, even though you've been working all those years, you achieved a tremendous success after Iran Modern with major shows in Tamar Grand Gallery and museum shows, and just continued, with critics reviewing your work so favorably. But I think the last year has really been a banner year for you with the production of your daughter's film on your life, and then three shows in California, culminating with the Yerba Buena show, which is not only devoted to you, but it also shows the familial context of your life and your struggles in all these years. And so I think I would now like to pass to the artworks themselves and share the screen and ask you to comment on. We have a selection of some of the works from the Yerba Buena show. And okay, the first one is this work called Tear Gas and Tea, the Afternoon. And it brings up three different kinds of imagery, the brutality of police actions that inspired you from the Arab Spring, your leitmotif of the suit or corporate man who underlies all these machinations of power and power plays, and the female nude. So I wanted to discuss a little bit your use of female nudity, what it means to you. Why is it significant in your work?
Okay. As you notice, this is this painting done 2012. This is at the height of the Arab Spring Revolution. And interestingly, we see the kind of culmination of that is happening right now in Syria. But at that time, my impression was that to show the brutality of the apparatus of the government, whatever the government is, which we have a bunch of them right now, and mix it with the life, which again 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we had the slogan came from Iran, Zan Zendegi Azadi, which the nude woman is a symbol of it. Now, that nude woman is based on two approach that I have. One is a traditional Western art, which they have a lot of nudity in it, and I do like those paintings, and I like to have it in my painting too. And the other part which is really important, is the protest against hijab in Iran, and nudity, or hijab is one of the main problem of Iranian politics right now. So this was a protest also to that politics. And
yes,
then the corporate guy is usually in my painting. They exist there somehow. They are main corporate element of our society, which I depict.
Well, you also use humor in many of your paintings, and even though you're not known as a humorist, there is always an element of irony and satire that links your work, for instance, somewhat to Ardeshir Mohasses and other artists who are, they were actually caricaturists. That's very different. You, from my mind, you are first and foremost a painter, and what interests you first is the process of painting. So we have a number of other examples. In this next one, here we have a lot of your familiar themes and imagery. And what was particularly interesting to me was understanding better the figure of the donkey or ass that is being carried on the shoulders of Imam Khomeini. Would you discuss the significance of this imagery, perhaps where you originally discovered it and what it means in Persian culture?
Okay, this painting was it has a Iranian source, which I think uh, um, probably early 19th centuries caricatures. I don't know, you know better than me that the Mullah Nasruddin newspapers, they use a lot of caricature. And I had a bunch of them as a card postal. So one of them I
Yes.
remember had this either a cleric having a donkey on the shoulder or some politician having a donkey on the shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is based on that, but I gave him a kind of contemporary twist to it, which is a cleric having a donkey. Donkey usually is a symbol of in Iranian culture, is a symbol of stupidity, and
Stupidity. Yeah. Yeah.
so he's carrying this stupidity with him very
Yes.
proudly. And for me, in order to make it a kind of carnival looking, I had this violin playing violin with him and two
Mhm.
terrorists on the back. To those
Yes.
two terrorists backing the
Mm.
cleric. So
Yeah.
this is
So
a
it's
combination.
like it's a little bit like a demonstration or a march in which the singers and the entertainers are playing in the front, but what is coming in the back is the violence and terror. Yes, that's very interesting, Nikki. And as always, really, people need to look at the great use of color and the technique that you have that is always masterful and painterly, just as in this example. And here again, where we see your use of this very cold, sort of erotic female figure and transparency and multiple layerings. This one is very interesting because technically it's different from your other paintings. And um, the image is ambivalent because a dog is man's best friend, but he's also najas, unclean according to Islamic law. And here we don't really know what the relationship is between the dog and its master. Who is the master and who is the dog? But so that thematically, I think it works with all the rest of your work. But talk more about that stippling and sprinkling effect on the upper side of the canvas, please, if you would. How did
This
that come
painting,
about?
this painting, when I started, I didn't have a clue how it's going to look like. I just imagined that that would be an interesting image. But as you said, the dog also has a lovely relationship with the human being. But at the same time, I think in our culture, the dog is not only in snatches, is also um, uh, kind of kind of I don't know how to say it. attack animal for the boss, something like
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
but so I put it together. I didn't go. I realized that has kind of ambivalent, as you said, meaning. This guy is falling down for some reason. Either the dog is trying to come to the kindness with him, to be kind to him, or is the dog that is attacking him? It has a
yes.
meaning in this way. But
I,
at the
I, I think you're always fooling with your audience, Nicky John. You always
but
you
this
want to you want to surprise us. I'm just looking at this painting
right,
and noticing two things that the dog, like the power figures, has this harlequin-like a pattern on his body. And
right,
I'm also noticing the shoes of this prone figure that we'll return to in another moment. They recur later in your work as well. But again, we have we've spoken about the duality, but I think it's very interesting that when you were looking for an aesthetic solution for the painting, that you put the painting on the ground. And this is one of the few examples, I don't know if you did others, in which you were, not painting in the traditional way of the vertical artist with a vertical painting on the wall, but in the way of abstract expressionism and contemporary post-war painting of having the work on the ground and using sort of gestural technique. So I
right.
think it speaks to the creativity of continued reinvention of yourself. These other works, we're going to go a little quicker because I think we are reaching the
Okay.
end of our time. I can't resist this one, The Long Day. Again, power figures. This time, the one on the right is readily identifiable. The one on the left is a European politician of some kind, both standing to attention. What should be in front of them is the the D-Day troop ceremonies, but what is actually happening because of at that moment, there were nuclear crises with both Iran and Korea, is reflected in these huge, really horrifying guerrillas that you have who seem to be threatening the world order. And as the viewer looks closely, the one on the left is holding a missile. So this is, I think, one of your, as I've called your paintings inscrutable, but thanks to you, I think we're able to understand the work much better and to understand the political in the personal. In COVID, we see a return to nature in your paintings, which I think was a wonderful reaction to the confinement and the isolation of that period. And we see you turning to landscapes or mixing landscapes with your power imagery as you did in this painting. Again, blending the Persian tradition with European modernist traditions. Here, the concept of martyr and martyrdom and witnessing, shahid and shahed, which I think you are asking all of us to witness the martyrdoms that go on every day. And finally, I would ask to speak with you about this other shoe painting, which has a very evocative title, Tale of the Lost Dream. Would you talk about this painting a little, Nicky, and what it represents to you?
For this painting, I kind of had a hint at old dictatorship, how they look like. But I think instead of having one of them as a symbol of this one, for some reason I picked up this old torn up shoes as a symbol of worshipped by a bunch of other people around him, which is mostly or lackeys or the servant of this old shoes. So it's basically has that kind of meaning. But beside that, as you mentioned during the talking, I'm usually looking for the composition, for the painting, for the quality of the form of the painting. So these are the paintings that most, again, has a meaning to it, but at the same time, a lot of form and, painting going on with them.
Well, I think the endurance of your art through these so many decades of upheavals and struggles is due, I think, to the very strong painterly qualities of your work. That as interesting as the content is, you're a painter first and foremost, and that audiences and critics are drawn to your genius as a painter. Nicky, we have taken a journey with you from your early works in hybrid and experimental form to your current very personal but universal signature style. And I think I would end here and open the discussion for questions. But thank you very, very much for all your comments.
Thank you, Layla.
Thank you, Dr. Diba and Nicky, so much for this conversation and for diving deeper into kind of decoding Nicky's work. I'm Amy Kisch. I'm the curator of The Personal is Political at YBCA and Nahid Hagigat Etched in Time. And yeah, it's been wonderful to hear you talk. I often have been giving curator-led tours, and people ask me, what does the shoe mean? What does the chair mean? So yeah, so again, it's great to be able to go into that. I also just want to offer a little context before we kind of start answering some of the questions that have showed up in the Q&A. Just some context about how these shows came to be and how Nicky's work that you've seen just now, several of those works plus others are in San Francisco now. We've just announced that we're extending the exhibition to be open till March 23rd. So if you're in San Francisco or you are able to get to San Francisco between now and then, please come see the show. But last year, as kind of was mentioned earlier, Sarah Nodjoumi, Nicky's daughter and Nahid Hagigat's daughter, and her partner, Till Schauder, they have a company called Partner Pictures, created this film, A Revolution on Canvas, telling Nicky's story and also the family story. And this isn't just a story about Iranian artists. It's about kind of really the impact of artists on revolutions and the impact of revolutions on artists and families. So when I had seen this film, I said, we have to do something to bring this work to San Francisco. And so we brought it to the Yerba Buena Center for the Arts. And, had concurrently, you'll see in the film, if you haven't seen it already, it's on HBO, that it tells Nahid and Nicky's story as these two artists in this time. And, so it was important to bring both of their work and kind of the film to San Francisco. So the film is showing every Wednesday at YBCA at 2:00, which is a day that is free for the institution. And then the first Thursday of every month at 5:30 p.m. and the second Sunday of every month at noon. For the opening, Nicky and Nahid were able to both come. You'll see some installation shots of the show. And we had kind of, as you'll see, monitors that have bits of the film that also had the rest of the family. So Sarah and Till, the filmmakers, were able to come out, as were Nicky and Nahid's grandchildren, Luca and Nika, who have a band called Lunica, to do a concert for the opening weekend, but really just showing these three generations of artists across these three disciplines of visual art, film, and music, all committed to democracy and justice. So it was really just an honor. And if you haven't seen the film on HBO, you're welcome to come to San Francisco and see it. One of the first questions is kind of touches upon that, which is that the question is that we saw the drama of your works that are being held hostage at TMOCA in the HBO documentary. Can you give us an update on what the latest is and on what is going on with those artworks? And before you answer, just to say here in this image that you see, this is a copy of the newspaper article that kind of spawned, Nicky needing to leave. And in the exhibition, we have reproductions of the artworks that are being held in Tehran that you'll see in a forthcoming image. But Nicky, do you want to share a little bit about how things have progressed, if at all, from the film?
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Yerba Buena. You've been fantastic all the way. This is about 2 years ago, we hired a lawyer to sue the Museum of Tomoka, Museum of Modern Art in Tehran, and the Ministry of Culture. After a year and a half, finally, about 6 months ago, the first court was there to make a decision, and the decision was for us. The verdict for us to we have a right to get the painting back. Upon the museum objection and the Ministry of the Culture, the second court was there again for about 2 months ago, and the verdict went for the museum that they have to have the work for them. Our lawyer is still thinking that we have a chance to go after them. Hopefully, we get some of them or most of it. Now, for me, I'm not looking to get them back anymore. If we get it back, that's fine. For me, the question is to museum to accept they confiscated this work, and they say it, and they don't want to say that. So that's the situation.
Thank you, Nicky June. The image that you see right now, by the way, is one of the paintings in the show, but it's Nicky's creating this work throughout the filming of A Revolution on Canvas. And you can go see it at YBCA. One of the other questions is someone who had gone to see the show and saw it in person, and it said that this was the first time they'd ever been able to see your work in person, and seeing them, experiencing them live was magnificent and moving, and a question about why you choose to create your work on such a large scale.
I love to do a larger scale painting because I can move around it. I can move much freely and do whatever I want to do on the larger scale. In a smaller scale, it has its own merits. It has its own fantastic way of doing it. But the large painting is just you dance over it. That's the way I can say it.
And when you're working generally, are you often working on several different paintings at once or just one?
Several paintings is on the wall that is being done. Some of them are already done, but it's not finished completely. When I start the next one, which is the last one, at the time I'm working on the last one, I am watching the other one because there are mistakes, there are things that are happening that I probably fix it on the new one and go back to the old one. So the older one, at least the older, up to 6 months, is on the wall along the new one to watch it to see if it's done. Then after that, after the timing, when I think it's completely done, I took it off. But the possibility is, if I see it 2 years from now, the first thing I see, the the this this the mistake that I have done. The first thing I see it. That's why I do not like to see my painting at all. After,
Yes.
if I see it some other places, I don't look at it.
Well, thank goodness the rest of us like seeing them. So you can just send them, just keep sending them our way. One more question for you, and then I have a question for Dr. Diba. Is that a question in that's been submitted is, how do you choose your titles?
That's a tricky one. We discussed it with Layla John the other day. My tendency is to have a title that not to reflect what's going on in the painting, to disorient the audience, disorient the viewer, or give them, wrong direction instead of right direction. I would like to give it the wrong direction. So pick up some title that may have no relationship whatsoever to the painting.
Got it. Thank you. Dr. Diba, a question for you, which is, first of all, thanking both of you for this incredible talk. And for Dr. Diba to share if you have information on what has happened to the Nagaristan Museum since 1979, and if you know if the collection is still in place as you left it.
Well, thank you for that question. It's been a major focus of my thinking and work for the last 10 years. The museum, sadly, was occupied in February 1979 by the Revolutionary Guards. And it was the only museum that was closed and taken over to become the offices or headquarters of the Revolutionary Guards. All the collections had been bricked up by myself and my staff and locked under key, and they were handed over to the new regime in a so peaceful way. The collection disappeared for more than 20 years, and sometime in the 1990s, individual works, and as we said earlier, there were at least 3,000 works when I left the museum. Large individual paintings started showing up in museums, particularly I think in Salbadanier or Saadabad, I don't remember which. And then almost all the paintings resurfaced. The decorative arts are much more difficult. They've only appeared a little bit at the Niavaran Cultural Center. So as we had never done a catalogue raisonné of the whole collection, the fate of the collection remains unknown, and it is up to the Iranian authorities, as Nicky has said with Tomoka, to give an accounting of what happened to the collections. But I have them all up here.
Thank you.
At least.
Yes. A question actually about a specific artwork in the We the Witness painting. The question is, were you thinking about the helplessness of the silent majority or their inertia when we see cruelty and tyranny against protesters?
Do I think about
The helplessness.
silent majority? No, I don't think so. In that painting, the first really concern was a formal concern. If you look at the painting has 3-4 layers of different superimposed subject. So that was the concern, and the next concern was the fight and the witnessing the fight. the guy is down there witnessing the fight. The fight symbolize, again, you see the one of the guys has the Harlequin symbols, which is, shows one of those corporate guy with another guy. So it's a bit between power relationship rather than a silent majority or related to that.
Thank you. I think we have time for a couple of more questions. One of the questions is really about if you can give people a peek, not necessarily visually, although you're welcome to pull something from behind you, but about what you're currently inspired by or what you're currently working on.
I'm looking at the painting. I am. You see, my thinking is usually about a couple of things, and all the paintings around that, and it's about freedom. That's one subject that is about woman life freedom. Those are the subjects that I'm thinking about. What comes along, I'm not sure. I look for it. I put things together in order to finalize an image that somehow relate to those subjects. So that's what I do.
Thank you. In the exhibition, you referenced this earlier, that initially you were an aspiring filmmaker, and that because that was too expensive a medium to really explore, you turned and focused on painting, which is, we're grateful for. But we're lucky to have in the show at YBCA an animation where you have kind of done some early animating. I don't know, Alireza, if you can go back, but something that, in terms of what you were just saying about, woman, life, freedom, and also some of the themes in this actual animation are these themes that again and again are the same struggles, the same conflicts, the same, violence and oppression. And in the film as well, there's a scene where you're standing there with a woman life freedom sign while your grandchildren are playing a concert in New York, after the murder of Masa Amini. And I'm curious what it's like for you, and for you, Dr. Diba, as well, who's been, again, displaced by politics in their way, and your kind of creative practices altered, kind of forever. How you continue to show up with a level of passion, a level of energy, a level of commitment when you keep, needing to chip away this relentless incrementalism at the same topics again and again, and how you stay inspired to do that.
Well, for me, is a constant struggle. I have not been able to achieve it. Is when it's probably achieved, then I might have changed the subject matter. There is no reason to do it. Just to mention that animation, the first time I saw it after 40 years or something, all those slogans on top of the writing, for the writing, the animation still exists. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the struggle is about. We are fighting for the freedom of all these things. And that's what really matters. If it change, I promise you, I do other things.
Yeah. And for you, Dr. Diba, similarly, I guess to some extent, this larger question afoot is also, what do you want your legacies to be, in terms of what kind of you've devoted your lives to?
I believe in cultural diplomacy, and I myself have always been a bicultural person, and I believe in the power of art to create bridges between people and to create change. And I believe that artists are the best revolutionaries. So all of these, I think, factors contribute to an ongoing dedication to keep on speaking and keeping on to speak out, to continue to speak out.
I couldn't agree with you more. I believe that is all the time we have. Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Dr. Diba and Nicky and Ali Reza. I will turn it back over to you to maybe share about some of the upcoming programming that we have for the shows.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much to all of you. It's been a pleasure to have this conversation. Thank you to dear Layla and Nicky for today's incredible conversation. We are so honored to have you both take the time out of your Saturday to be with us today. And special thanks to Amy for all her brilliant hard work in bringing the current exhibition at YBCA to life. Thank you to the entire team at YBCA for their continued collaboration and dedication to the exhibition and all the many associate programs throughout its run. I had the listing of all the upcoming programs listed on the screen. I hope everybody took note of those. Our next virtual talk will be with Nahid AKArt and curator Panteo Hariri, which will be held on February 9th. So mark your calendars, and we will be announcing registration for that as well coming soon. If you happen to be in the Bay Area, we highly recommend to visit the current exhibition at YBCA, which has just been extended through March 23, 2025. You really have to experience this exhibition in person to really appreciate the works. As always, please visit farhang.org for all our latest upcoming programs, events, talks, performances. Thank you to the audience who are joining us from across the globe today for today's conversation, and we look forward to welcoming you again next time. Until then, we bid you farewell. Have a lovely day. Thank you, Layla John, Nicky John, and Amy John. It's been a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.